changing angel. Where will it lead us from here? With no loving in our souls and no money in our coats. You can say we're satisfied, angel, angel. You can say we never tried. Welcome to the greatness machine, Dondapani.
Awesome. Thank you. I love your singing.
Thank you. I love to sing
You're
for
a pink
you.
unicorn.
Guys, welcome to the Greatness Machine. I'm your host, Darius Mirshahzadeh, and we have a very special guest again, Mr. Dondapani, for part 2 of the show. Thank you for coming back, Dondapani.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Guys, the format of the show is quite simple. We're bringing together change makers from across the world who are living their passions to create greatness. And I said this last week, I'm going to say it again, that spending time with Dondapani is a treat. And I tell all my friends, I'm like, I don't care what you're doing today, what time zone you're in. I'm in Central Standard, 2 o'clock Central Standard. You need to tune in and check out Dondapani. You're literally one of the most inspirational people I know. So I'm really happy to have you here. Guys, first of all, the format of the show is simple. And I do want to go over a couple of things. We are live streaming. We are live. Start a watch party. Ask those questions. My team's on standby. And they're really excited to answer your burning questions. With that said, again, we do have Dondapani here, and I just want to jump right into it, but I do want to give your background. Do you mind if I do that, Mr. Dondapani?
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Dondapani is a Hindu priest, entrepreneur, and former monk of 10 years. He's a teacher, and he's on a mission to help people live a life of purpose and joy. And there's so much more to you, but I like that one because we touched on that a little bit last week around the ideas around purpose. And so, first of all, welcome back to the show, Dondapani. You're my first repeat guest.
If I keep messing up, I'll just keep coming back on your show.
I hope I didn't. When you were like writing me and saying that you could redo it, someone said, "Oh, that was bummer that happened." I said, I don't know about you, but obviously I never want to lose a minute with a guest, but if there was ever a guest for me to get 2 weeks in a row, it's Dondapani. So I was like, oh, it's all good. Like,
no, thank you. You're very kind.
It's really good to have you, man. So
thank you.
I do want to dive right in, and
yep.
And I was thinking about with the work you do around purpose and the work you do around teaching people to find their purpose. I guess my question for you is, and I've been talking to a lot of people about this recently, around how hard it is to find one's purpose. And so I would love to know, when you, like, what got you into the purpose work, number one, and then number two, like, how do people find their purpose? Like, how's that go?
Yeah, so to answer the first question, as you know, I work primarily with entrepreneurs and some athletes as well. And when I work with entrepreneurs, I really work with them on understanding how the mind works and learning how to focus the mind. So I teach them about the mind and I teach them about focus. And after many years of working with them, I realized that a lot of entrepreneurs didn't know what their purpose was. And I've gotten to know them now. I left the monastery about 10, 11 years ago. So I've seen a lot of them, exit their business, sell their business, and then they go, what now, right? What's the next thing I should do? And when you don't have a purpose, that's the question you always ask. What do I do now? If you were clear on purpose, then you always know what the next thing to do is, because you're just heading towards your purpose. You just do the next natural thing. So that's kind of where that all stemmed from, and how I started to work with entrepreneurs and discovering their purpose. But in terms of, why most people don't know their purpose, for me, I feel very strongly that it's because, one is, we've never been told that we need a purpose. I mean, when you were growing up and when you were in school, did any of your teachers ever look at you and say, hey, Darius, you need a purpose in life?
No. They told me I needed to quit talking in class.
Hey, they said that to me too.
Okay, cool. Great minds.
And stop sleeping, stop falling asleep. But I mean, they never tell you. So no one tells us that we need a purpose in life. And even if we did think about, maybe I should have a purpose in life, then no one teaches us how to go about figuring out a purpose in life. So we all struggle. But if you look at our day-to-day life, most of our day is driven by purpose, right? I mean, if you live in a big city like Los Angeles or New York or somewhere, you get in a car in LA, there's a purpose. You never get in a car in LA just to go for a drive, not in that traffic, right? So you have a purpose, you're going to meet a friend, you're going to a meeting, whatever it may be. So a whole day is driven by purpose. You go to a bathroom, there's a purpose. You never get to the bathroom and go, I have no idea why I'm here, right? I mean, your whole day is driven by purpose. So why shouldn't life have a purpose? And one of the big reasons people don't know their purpose, besides never being taught how to figure it out or told to figure it out, is most people never spend any time with themselves. And if you don't spend any time with yourself, how would you actually get to know you? You wouldn't. So if we wanted to get to know each other, we would have to spend time with each other. We would every Friday go out for a cup of coffee, go out for a drink, a meal. And if we did that every week after a year, we'd get to know each other really well. I know what kind of pranks you play on your brother. I know, I know what makes you cranky, what makes you upset, what makes you happy, what makes you sad. You know the same about me too, as we get to know each other. But if we don't spend any time with each other, I wouldn't get to know you. And the same way, if I don't spend time with myself, I don't get to know me. And if I don't get to know me, I don't get to understand what I want and ultimately why I am here and what my purpose is in life.
So when you think about in terms of helping someone go through the journey of finding their purpose, and I've done some purpose work. Do you want to hear my purpose I came up with for myself?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah,
please. Sorry. So I
that's terrible purpose. No, just kidding.
It's the worst. It's the absolute worst. No, so I told you last time we talked that I did Stagen, right? So I'm a graduate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm a graduate of ILP of the Integral Leadership Program.
That's awesome. Yeah.
It's a cool program. Yeah. And I wrote Rand yesterday and told him that we were talking about him.
Oh, I love Rand Stagen.
Yeah. There's a lot to love there.
Yeah.
And so part of Stagen is you come up with your core purpose. And so I was, one of the things that resonated between me with you was I saw you speak at TEDx Reno, and you were the keynote, the opening, speaker, right? And I was like, wow, like you blew my mind. And right away I wanted to bring you in. It took time because the first time you were supposed to come into my company, there was a snowstorm in New York and we canceled this massive conference, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that, but yeah.
I do. I remember that. Yeah, we had it in Long Island planned, right?
Yeah, it was a big thing in Long Island. And so anyway, I find that I have this resonance towards people that for some reason I'm attracted to people that help with others finding engagement. And there was something about your talk around focus and your talk around distraction. And I view that distraction is the opposite of engagement, right? Like if I'm engaged with you, then the opposite of that is I'd be distracted from you. And so I don't know what it is, but there's something around this idea. I do know what it is actually now, which is a story for another time. But what I have had this natural affinity and attraction towards those who teach about engagement. And I've been on this path towards engagement nonstop for probably 15 years now. Mm-hmm. And so, and when I was CEO of my company, or when I work with individuals, just, and I'm not a coach or teacher or anything like that. I do it more just like for the hell of it, I guess. I always end up teaching them things around engagement. So I use Strength Finder, which is a tool around engagement. My modality is core values, getting real clear on your values, because that's how you can basically live an engaged life. And so I figured out that I'm obsessed with two things. I'm obsessed with words, and I'm obsessed with engagement. And so I wanted to frame that for you. So when I read you my core purpose, you'll understand it.
Okay.
All right. Ready?
Please. I can't wait to hear.
I'm going to read it to you because I'm still I don't want to screw it up. So my purpose in life is to live a poetic life, a life of true engagement that helps others learn and reach their potential. So that's my core purpose.
I love that. Yeah. Can I offer a thought?
Of course, yes.
Yeah. First of all, I should say congratulations on actually doing the work to come up with a concise statement like that. You know, most people don't. And just to take a little detour on our conversation, not a detour, just a little sidetrack a little bit. But I remember a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, I was speaking at a fintech event, a very exclusive fintech event in San Francisco, where it was only invite only, some of the most successful fintech investors around the world. And I was talking about purpose and focus. And after my talk, I was talking to one of the ladies that were there, and she ran a successful company. I asked her what her company did, and she said, "We make loans affordable." 4 words. And to me, it was super clear, super concise, right? We make loans affordable. Right off the bat, I understood what the company did. And then I asked her, "What's your purpose in life?" And she spoke for 5 minutes. So no clarity, right? I mean, what does your company do? We make loans affordable. 4 words, you can describe your company. And now what's your purpose in life? And it's a 5-minute thing. So that's all to say that I really appreciate the work that you went through to come up with a concise statement like that. The one additional thought I wanted to offer, potentially to ponder on and think on, I feel that everyone should have a core purpose in life, one single core purpose in life, and then everyone should have sub-purposes in life. The fine print for the core purpose is that your core purpose in life should never be dependent on someone or something. Because if that someone or something goes away, then you have no core purpose, right? So it's fine now. How old are you?
42.
42. It's fine now that, you know, you're 42 years old, you want to impact people's lives, you want to help people. At 90, you're going to go, bugger this, I don't want to do this anymore, right? I just want to hang out in my house, have some chai, you know, do whatever, watch Netflix, you know, just chill out. I've been doing this for the last 60 years. I've done it. I've got books out there. I've got programs out there. That's when you're going to go, what the hell do I do with my life right now? Right? Because you made your core purpose dependent on someone or something. So for example, if you were 100 years old and you lived a glorious life, and in the last 6 months of your life, unfortunately, you have to be in bed because you can't get up and move, and you know, you're dying. And now you can't impact people's lives, right? Your finger's a little bit crusty, you can't really type. So you're sitting there laying in bed, and now you go, what am I going to do with my life? So I always tell people, make sure your core purpose is never dependent on anyone or anything, but your sub-purposes can be dependent on someone or something. So my core purpose in life is self-realization, right? 2 words, right? And that can be defined and elaborated, right? These are the 2 words that I use to define my my purpose, my core purpose, which then I have, you know, a paragraph explaining what that means to me, right? I don't really care if other people need to understand it, right? And then I have a few sub-purposes. So one of my sub-purposes in my life is my wife. Another sub-purpose is my daughter. Another sub-purpose is my project in Costa Rica. Another sub-purpose is my business. So any one of those things go away, I can still function, right? So one of my sub-purpose in life is to impact humanity and the environment in a positive way. That's a very clear purpose I have, to impact humanity and the environment. But it's a sub-purpose, not a core purpose, because for some reason, I'm no longer able to do that, right? For, you know, because I'm old or whatever it is, I still have a core purpose that's not dependent on anyone or anything, and I can still continue to pursue that. What I found is that when I've noticed people make their core purpose dependent on an external source, and they're no longer able to connect with that, then they lose that core purpose. And that usually happens more in the later part of life.
So I'm gonna tell you my core purpose then, because it's really simple. So my core purpose is to live a poetic life. That's I know that's what it is. And you know, I'll read you. I came up with that because I was like, that word like sprung on me, and then I went and looked up the definition of the word poetic, so that, because I think it fully encompasses, like, when people are not clear on what that means, it means having an imaginative or sensitively emotional style of expression. And for me, like, that could be in the form of comedy, singing, having a
Right.
great conversation, interacting, talking, speaking, anything, right?
Yeah.
And I can do that, and I feel like I'm in flow state. I feel like I'm a whole person, and I think you're right. The sub purpose is right now, at least, is this engagement piece.
And here's the important thing too, Darius, you talked about, you said earlier about how words are so important to you, right? For me, words are really important too. And the way I use words is that I create a word for myself, right? Or I take a word and then I define it so that it makes sense to me, right? So when I use that word, it's clear. So the way when you say poetic, someone listening to you might go like, oh, that means he writes poetry, he
right,
writes poems. But no, you've defined it in the words that you've described to me, right? So I think when we define our core purpose and we use the words, those words need to be defined to us. So when I work with people and I help them come up with a sentence that describes their core purpose in life, every word is carefully chosen, and I make them define each word. Right. So in your case, you say poetic, and then you elaborated to me what poetic means so that it's clear to me. Not that it matters to me, it just has to be clear to you. So when you say, I want to live a poetic life, that word poetic, as soon as you say it, resonates clearly in your mind. And as soon as you say the word poetic, all those descriptions come to the forefront of your mind. And you go, this is the life I'm supposed to be leading.
Yeah, man. I love, so, I don't know, we haven't talked about my book much, but my book is around the next, I believe that there's almost like a pyramid of importance, and that at the top of it is purpose.
Yeah.
And I think the base of it is values, core values. And I think because it's the how, and some might say visions at the top and missions below that, or purposes below that, and then values. But I think it's like purpose, vision, values, or purpose, values, depending on how you think of it, right? And so for me, values, because there's so much of an opportunity to create boundaries for your behavior and expectations, and I think values do that. And so my book is about how do you do this exact same thing that you're talking about for purpose. How do you do that with the values? How do you design them for use? Because what you're talking about, from what I'm hearing, is designing one's purpose for use and for clarity in their life, right? Clarity is part of its usefulness, right? Does that,
100%.
would you agree with that?
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. Because the purpose gives you a North Star of where you're headed, right? And then one of the things that we do is what I call guiding principles, right? So we have when you say core values, I call them guiding principles.
Right.
And the guiding principles are broken up into two groups, which are practices and guidelines. And the guidelines are, what is the framework that you need to live within in order to stay on the path to get to fulfill your purpose, right? And that's what the core values are. I look at them as the white lines on the freeway, right? You stay within the white lines so that you can stay on the path to get to your destination. Unless you're driving in India, then you just drive wherever you want to drive, right?
I'm in a rickshaw, just getting after it.
Right. So the core values you say to me, when I work with companies and I hear core values, I think white lines on the freeway, right? If you stay, you create those white lines so that it helps you to focus, right? Those core values. The same way for me, I have guiding principles, which are, guidelines and practices. What are the frameworks? These provide the framework, which if I stay within this framework, I can live a life that's aligned with my purpose.
Yeah, I agree with that. I heard, you know Bob Glazer? Are you friends with him?
Yeah, I actually have an interview with him like next week or coming up.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he has his new book coming out.
Right.
Bob, if you're listening to this, like, we got a call next week, so I'll see you. Anyway, I heard him talking about, because he's really into core values as well, and he was saying, you're going against, to your point, your guiding principles or core values, depending on what you want to call them, when you feel friction, when you rub up against them, when you're out of alignment with them, you start to feel it. And I think your body, like what I've learned, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, is let me back up. About 3 years ago, right after I met you, I started going through this transformation where I basically was questioning what I was doing with my life in a pretty strong way. So much so that about 9 months ago, I stepped down as CEO of my company. And it's not because I felt like I had built a great company with my partners, and they continue to run the business and they're doing a great job. There was nothing against them. This was a personal choice. And it was because I felt like I was out of alignment with my purpose and with my values. And again, not because of the company, because of myself, right? And so what happened during that time was there was this whisper telling me that something was missing in my life. And that whisper became a shout over about it was very whispery for about 2 years. And then the last year, it got really ornery and vocal with me.
This guy's not listening to me.
Yeah. Hey, Darius, I'm done listening. I'm done whispering to you. Now I'm going to shout in your face. And so one of the things that I picked up from that was my body started talking to me a lot, and I could feel a lot of it was through anxiety or exhilaration or joy, these different feelings. And I found that when I was out of alignment with what I felt were my purpose and my values, my body, I became anxious and I became uncomfortable. And I felt like when I was in line with my purpose and and at that point I hadn't even fully defined my purpose. I just kind of like intuitively understood it. But my values I had defined. When I was in alignment, I felt a sense of fulfillment, a sense of calmness, a sense of relief, and I felt a sense of joy. And so I wanted to know, in your experience, when you talk to people about finding their purpose or defining their principles, and you think about the mind-body connection, like how do you consider these things? Or the story I just told you, like, does that give you any, like, what's your position on that? Or how should people think about that as far as you're concerned?
I can't speak for others. It's honestly, it's work that you truly have to commit and want to do. I've started working with a bunch of people on this, and a lot of people bail after a few months just because it's just too much work. And also it requires a huge shift potentially in your life, right? And people fear what they might discover, right? And they don't want that change, because they all of a sudden you might wake up one day and you go like, oh, I actually need to be a pole dancer or something, and that's my purpose in life. And you go like, holy crap, what am I?
But I'm a lawyer. I'm a lawyer. I can't be a stripper.
Exactly, right. So, and I think people fear that change or what they might discover, so they don't really want to embrace it, right? So you really have to have a lot of humility. But in terms of myself, I find that when I'm not living in, and I like to use the word alignment, and I'm very particular about words like you, I like to use the word alignment. When I'm not in alignment with my values and my guiding principles, then I find I'm out of sync. Things don't work so well. Things don't flow so smoothly. I think the best way to describe it is if I were dancing with someone, Western dancing, like ballroom dancing, I would be stepping on their toes constantly. That's when I know I'm out of alignment. Whereas if you see professional dancers, they move in harmony. When someone takes a step towards the partner steps back. And then when they step forward, the other partner moves back. That's a very harmonious flow. And that's what I feel when you're living your life in alignment with your purpose, in alignment with your guiding principles or core values, as you say, you call it, then everything flows well. Your body is harmonious, your mind is harmonious. There's just a really nice flow. Things happen, you meet the right people, timing is really good in life, and that's how I tell I'm in alignment with how I'm supposed to be living my life.
That's amazing. And so when you think of that, like that harmony that you speak of, and you think of, and I think you're a great example of this. You work with some of the probably top, most successful people on the planet, right? In the business world, and even to your point, outside of the business world. When you work with these people and they are searching for this type of, I don't know what word is, maybe alignment or success, that, because I think that a lot of people that are looking for their purpose and their values and their guiding principles, this alignment, this feeling like they're doing the right things for themselves at the deepest parts of their body and their soul.
Yeah.
A lot of those people have probably already achieved, to your earlier comment, financial or commercial or, influencer type of success, but they don't feel, but there's a difference between what's on paper and what's inside, right?
Yeah.
So what do you see is that when you have these folks who are quote unquote successful, and then they come to you and they do this work, what changes for them after that?
Well, two things. Before I come to this, one thing I do want to say is I definitely don't want to give the impression that my life is perpetually in alignment with my purpose, right? And I'm not, even though I may be dressed up this way and people go like, oh, he lived as a monk, he's always in flow and he doesn't step on anybody's toes. Absolutely not. I step on my wife's toes all the time. And she tells me that, right? So, and my life gets out of sync because it's virtually impossible to be in a state of flow every single day. And especially if you're pushing yourself to grow, to be better, then you're going to always hit a place where you get to your goal or the next plateau or base camp or the next camp. You're going to enjoy it for a period of time, and then you're going to keep pushing yourself, and then everything in your life needs to go out of sync again as you work yourself to get to the next level. And that's really what I've seen with the people that I work with, and with myself as well. I work with one of the best soccer players in the world, and when I work with him, I see we work so hard, we get to a place he's in perfect harmony and sync, and then he keeps pushing the boundaries of his mind, his body, and then everything starts to fall apart again, right? Because everything, your whole nervous system, your mind, your body has to readjust to the new bar that you set for yourself. And while that readjusting process is happening, everything around you is going to start to be a little bit chaotic. But once you get better at this, you start to be able to handle that chaos and control it a little bit better as you go to the next version of you. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm articulating it well.
No, I think you are. Yesterday, we had a guest on the show, and we were talking about the people's wanting to be in a state of homeostasis psychologically and emotionally. And I think like that's what we're talking about here is getting out of homeostasis, right? Getting out of this.
Explain that. I don't understand that word.
So homeostasis, like think of the body. Like if the body wants to stay in a state of homeostasis, it's the most efficient and most least expressive of energy. And what it means is it's the most efficient way that you're living. And so let's say, for instance, like you weigh, I don't know, 150 pounds. And
thank you.
I was hard to tell with all those.
You can't see me under these robes.
The robes take off 10 pounds.
Oh yeah, totally. And I look, and another 10 for the camera, right?
And so homeostasis says that's where the body, that's where it's set. And so if you want to go to 160 pounds, you really have to eat a lot of extra food to gain that weight, right? Because your body's, and even then, if you start doing it, you'll be full, you won't be hungry, you won't be hungry the next day because you ate so much that day, because your body starts sending signals that says, no, I want to stay at 150. I've been here forever. And then the inverse is say you want to go to 130. When you start losing, your body will start to make adjustments to get you back to not losing weight, right? Yeah. And so they say that that's homeostasis. Our body, you have to, even muscle bodybuilders, if they want to gain muscle, they have to break the muscle down in order for it to build bigger, right? Mm-hmm. Homeostasis says, I just want to be left alone. I don't want to gain muscle, lose muscle. I just want to stay the status quo. So an easier way of saying it's status quo. And
that's the instinctive. And that's the instinctive part of the mind, right? The instinctive part of the mind, the animal nature of us hates change and wants things to stay the same, because when things stay the same, there's a comfort and the security of knowing what's going to happen. And when you break that, then there's a chance of fear, because I don't know now what's going to happen. And when people live in the instinctive mind, they fear change, they hate change.
Right. And so so I guess let me ask you a question, because my belief is most people are asleep. They want to stay in homeostasis because to your point earlier, it's scary and it's hard to grow, right? When I ran my first company, it was called Twin Capital Mortgage. And we grew from myself and an assistant to 150 people in 3 years. And I was young. I was 25 when I started this company.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, no big deal, right? So that's someone.
That's a great achievement. I was just.
Right. It sounds like I was bragging, but
no, I know, but seriously, in sincere compliment, that's amazing to in 3 years for that growth.
Yeah, it was amazing. The what part I left out was that it was a terrible company. It was not a fun place to work at a lot of the time because there were so many things going wrong, right? Because we were out of homeostasis all the time, right?
Right.
And so what a lot of people would say is they would say, "Oh, Twin Capital, where everything's always changing." And I remember a lot of people quit because of that. They just didn't like it because they couldn't get comfortable and they wanted that consistency. And that's one of the reasons why I fell in love with values or guiding principles, as you call them, because I felt like you could create invisible consistency. It was a benchmark, and you brought about it earlier where you said, "I'm not perfect. Like I'm stepping on people's toes all the time, but at least you know what it means. What is the definition of your toes being stepping on somebody? You've defined what that is, right?"
Yeah.
And so I feel the same way, which is once you define these things, at least you know when you're like out of balance or in balance, and then you can like fight to get back in balance once you're out of balance. And there's a centering, you know where to go back to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my question for you
and
is,
you're right. Sorry, go ahead. Yep.
Well, no, please, you go ahead and I'll ask my question.
No. I was just going to comment on something, but please go ahead with your question.
Oh, no, I insist.
Okay, if you insist, damn it, then okay, I will. Now, I was just going to say that, you mentioned earlier about people being asleep, and I think really what it is if you look at the mind in a simplified way, you could break it into three parts. You have the instinctive mind, the intellectual mind, and the intuitive mind. The instinctive is tied to your conscious mind, which is your external world, your five senses, your body. It's the animal nature of you, and it hates change, right? And people that don't like change live in the instinctive area of the mind, right? And that's how you tell. And they fear change. They fear things changing all the time, like people in your company, because when you change, you just don't know what's going to come up next, right? If you keep things the same, every day you come to work, there's a cup of coffee, 10 o'clock, there's a break, 1 o'clock, it's lunch, then it's safe, right? If a guy beats his wife every night, she feels safe knowing that, he's beating her every night. For her to leave him and go somewhere else is more fearful than getting beaten up every night because she doesn't know what's out there.
Wow.
And that's the instinctive mind, right? We are comfortable with what we know, even if what we know is not good for us.
So what about the intellectual mind then? How does that work?
The intellectual mind is the reason part of the mind. It's tied to the subconscious, and the subconscious is basically the storehouse of information. Every experience you ever had in your life, whether you remember or not, gets stored in the subconscious. Books, impressions from people, information you put in, all get stored in the subconscious. And the subconscious is the intellect, reason area of the mind. And depending on how well you process the information that comes in, and how well you bring that processing to a conclusion, and how well you store that information in your mind, then intellectual mind, that subconscious, can either be a chaos or super organized and helping you. You find people that can't make decisions, that are extremely indecisive, have constantly thoughts going in their head. These are people that put tons of information in their head, never process any of that information to bring it to a conclusion so they have an understanding. Now they're basically dying of indigestion, of too much information. And that causes confusion, indecision, should I go out tonight? Should I not go out? It's going to rain. I don't want to get wet again. Should I wear this shoe? Should I wear that shoe? What should I do? Should I not do this? And that just goes on all day because information has been put in an unsystematic way. It's never been processed. That's the intellectual area of the mind. The intuitive area of the mind is tied to your superconscious mind. That's the creative, spiritual, artistic area of the mind. Deeply, that's really the highest area of your mind. From there comes intuition. It's those moments when you go like, aha, that's what I need to do. You get that flash. That's coming from your intuition. So at any given point in time, you're either functioning in the instinctive, the intellectual, or the intuitive. And if you know the characteristics of each of these areas of the mind, that at any given point in time, you can also tell where someone is functioning. And based on where they're functioning, you know how to relate to them. If someone's functioning in the instinctive area of the mind, then you talk to them like an animal. If someone's functioning in the intuitive area of the mind, you talk to them a certain way. If someone's talking in the intellectual area of the mind, you talk to them a certain way. And it's very, yes.
How do you talk to someone like an animal?
Hey, kitty, kitty.
Come here, boy.
Exactly. Nice, kitty. No, just kidding. That's terrible. Darius, you make me say things that'll probably get me in trouble. But no, I think it's just understanding that if someone's in the instinctive area of the mind, they're in that fight or flight mode, then animal nature, right? They could get upset with you really quickly.
Right.
So you always have to treat them really like you would almost treat. Imagine if you were with a dog or a lion. You'd pet it, you'd be gentle with it, you treat it with a lot of kindness, right, and love, so that they don't get upset, right? Intellectual people don't get angry because they will reason with you. It's very hard to get into a heated, angry argument with the professor, because they're going to go, well, according to this book and the research done in 1976 and blah, 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 blah. And if they get upset, then they're moving over to the instinctive area of the mind.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love that. And we just had a question that just came in. It said, the question is,
Yeah.
if you spend most of your time in one area of the mind, what can you do to balance this more? It's a good question.
Okay, can you read that again, please?
So the question was, if you spend most of your time in one area of the mind, what can you do to balance this more? So let's say you're finding that you're always in the instinctual, or you're always in the intuitive, or you're always in the intellectual, but it sounds to me like you shouldn't stay in one mode. You should kind of play in the different areas, maybe. Or what's the question? Is what should you be in one, or can you be in all? What's your thoughts on that?
The question, the main question really should be is, what do you want to achieve, right? So again, comes down to purpose, right? My purpose in life is self-realization. Put it in an extremely simplified way, enlightenment, so that people can understand whatever enlightenment is, right? So because of that, I need to function in the intuitive area of the mind, right? I don't want to be in the instinctive area of the mind. If I'm in the instinctive area of the mind, I'm thinking about my body, right? I need to eat, I'm hungry, I need to sleep, I need to have sex, I need to do this. I'm in that animal nature. That's not going to help me get into enlightenment. If I'm in the intellectual area of the mind, then I'm reading philosophy. Well, the Buddha said, if you meditated under this tree, then this would happen. But then on the other hand, Lao Tzu said, in this book, and I'd be going on till the cows came home discussing, all different philosophies. But what about this? What about existentialism? And so I go, that two areas of the mind are not states of mind are not helping me. I want to function in the intuitive area of the mind, where I can have intuitive flashes that guide me, my awareness to more deeper, more refined areas of the mind, to experience the very depths of me. So the question is, what do you want to achieve in life, right? If you want to be a professor, you want to be involved in debates, where you go to debate conferences and you can debate with other people, then be in the intellectual area of the mind.
Right. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, or depending, what I just heard you say is depending on what you're trying to achieve, or what's appropriate too, right? Like if I'm at here's a perfect example. If I'm at a political debate between, Trump and Biden, having an intuitive conversation, it's probably not appropriate, right, today. I don't think I'm going to get very far in that group. You know what I mean?
No. Yeah, and you probably want to be in the intellectual area of the mind, where you can state some facts and reason, prove your case. Like lawyers may be functioning in the intellectual area of the mind. They have to remember a lot of information, a lot of cases. 1977, Johnson versus whoever else, Smith. This blah blah blah, and they make a case and they reason. That's the intellectual area of the mind. But that's what they need to do to achieve a goal. So always ask, what is my driving factor? Going back to purpose, right? What's your purpose in life? Once you know your purpose, you can really craft out your entire life, right? I remember speaking at an event. I held an event last year in London, and open to the public. A whole bunch of people came, and we had a Q&A towards the end. And someone asked me, Dondapani, I hear you talking about affirmations. In the morning when I wake up, I do meditation, and I do a little bit of breath control and a little bit of journaling. Do you think I should include affirmations in my morning practice? And I've also heard about this other practice. Do you think I should involve that as well? And I said, you're asking the wrong question. I answered the question you should be asking is, where do I want to go? Right? So I said, the way I put it to him is, I said, If you're building a wooden table, would you bring a cement mixer to the project?
No,
No.
of course not.
What would you bring? Like a
Hammer.
hammer, handsaw, nails, wood glue, some clamps. If I'm building pouring a concrete pad, would I bring, like a sewing machine? No, right? So what are you trying to achieve? And what are the tools that can help you achieve that? That's the question, right? That's why figuring out your purpose is so critical, because then, people wake up in the morning now and they go like, oh, I should do a little bit of headspace and a little bit of journaling because everyone's doing that. It seems to be good. It helps me. I feel better. That's not really the reason for doing that, because you feel better. Who cares about how you feel, right? Because that's just, for me, it's a temporary thing, right? Journaling makes you feel great for a few minutes. My question is, where are you going and what are the tools that can help you get there? And then you pick and choose, right, the tools. And maybe meditation is not the right one for you now, right? Maybe it's something else.
So I mean, I picked up a meditation practice last year. I tend to do it when I'm a little bit more anxious, to kind of just have a more of a connection with my anxiety. And sometimes I'll do it still when I'm not, but just because I want to practice and this goes back to when I met you, the art of, being aware and focus and just spending some time doing that practice for the sake of that practice. But so my question for you is, a lot of this stuff is probably pretty hard for people to wrap their head around, right? Like, well, how do I figure out my purpose? How do I figure out my morning routine? How do I figure out, what I'm supposed to do? Because I barely can, get out of bed and get to work and get home, feed my kids and do it all over again tomorrow. How am I supposed to do any of that stuff? Like, I'm not a former monk. I'm not, some CEO. How does a normal person do this stuff?
That's a great question. That, I thought a lot about this, and I got asked this question a lot. And for me, it really comes down by understanding your mind. Your mind is your most powerful tool, like you've heard me say many times before. And if you don't understand your mind, then you can't control it, harness it, focus it to figure out what it is you actually want in life, right? So everybody has a mind, but they're never trained how to use it. And that's why, like, when I work with people, I always start with the concept of awareness in the mind. You've heard me talk about it, right? We're not the mind, rather we're awareness, which I define as a ball of light moving through the mind. And the goal is to be able to take that awareness and hold it on one thing for a given period of time. We need to understand that basic mechanics of the mind. And once we understand that, then we can start to impact every other part of our life. But I think what a lot of people are trying to do is they're trying to find different tools to kind of patch their life and, duct tape their life together so it's, it's harmonious and it works. But that's not really the way. The best way to approach anything is to understand the mechanics of how that thing is working. And once you understand the mechanics of how that thing is working, then you can use it to actually create something better in your life. Like, once you understand your body and the mechanics of how your body works, then you can start treating it in the way that you can actually use to leverage it, right? Everybody has their own body, right? What type of food you eat and how you exercise may impact your body differently than it impacts mine. If I eat the same foods you do and I exercise the same way you do, it might not have the same impact on my body. But with our mind, we just really have to understand how our mind works. And once we understand how our mind works, we can start to control it. Once we can start to control our mind, then we can start to control everything else in our life, because everything in our life is a product of a creation of our mind. So that's where we need to start. We need to start by understanding the mind. And that's why, the first course I put out was the course on understanding the mind, because I feel that's where everybody needs to start, even children, right? Children struggle, children have stress, they have anxiety. Why? Because they don't know how the mind works and they don't know how to harness it and control it and use it for their benefit. So then their environment, which are the people and things around them, affects their mind and they suffer as a result of it. Same way like adults do, right? They've got kids, they got work. Like you're saying, I got to come home, I got to feed my kids, I got to do this, I got to do that. Their environment is creating all that stress on them. It's creating the stress on them because they haven't learned how to control their mind to handle everything around them.
So going back, I mean, obviously you've spent a lot of time learning these things, but I'd like to go back to when you were in the monastery. How old were you when you went to the monastery, by the way?
23 and a half, almost 24, I think.
So prior to going to choosing to become a monk, going to the monastery, did you have any training in any of these things?
Absolutely none, none at all. You know, I grew up being teased for being distracted in school, you know, and I couldn't concentrate. And fortunately, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, so there was no ADD or ADHD or drugs. You know, I would have been labeled and drugged for sure, you know. And no, seriously, man, you know, I mean, and I grew up in Malaysia where, you know, those words, letters, those alphabets didn't exist.
Right.
And so fortunately I was bad. And now I travel the world teaching people how to concentrate, because what happened, I went to the monastery. One of the first questions my guru asked me is, do you know how the mind works? And I said, I have absolutely no idea. And he says, well, it's going to be hard to work with you if you don't even understand your own operating system, right? So once you understand how your mind works, then it's easier to start to control and affect everything around you. And when I say the mind, I'm not talking about, you know, understanding like, oh, the prefrontal cortex or this or that. The mind, the way I teach it, is a very simplified way of looking at it, but highly effective, as you've heard me speak a few times about it.
So when you were 23 years old, you decided that you wanted to go to a monastery, become a monk. The first thing you learned was this from your is a guru, is that?
Yeah, guru. Mm-hmm.
Yes, so you had a guru that taught this to you, and what was that process like for you? Because obviously at that age, like your mind is very like still developing a lot. You're like a sponge, and you're like I mean, I got to assume monastic life is very, very different than like urban life in Malaysia. So what was that?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, I actually moved from Malaysia to Australia when I was a teenager. So I spent part of my later teen life in Australia and then early 20s in Australia as well. But yeah, hugely different from that. And the way my guru trained me wasn't the traditional, you know, wasn't in the way that, you know, people would think, where he sat in a classroom with a book and we had classes. All his training, I hate to say it, was almost a little bit like Karate Kid. You know, he would get me to go do things, right? And I would do it, and then I would come back. You know, I'd be wondering why the heck I'm doing this. Once he asked me to, you know, create a little pond on the edge of a cliff. You know, it took me weeks to create that. And then when I made the little pond on the edge of a cliff, he told me, you know, the rocks in those lava rocks would look really great around the pond. You know, so I would, like, the next few weeks walk all the way down to the bottom of the cliff to the river, carry a rock and walk up the cliff again, you know, put the rock on the lake, go by the pond, come back down. In a day, I would probably do 3 runs. So I would bring 3 rocks, you know. And a few weeks later, he asked me, how's it going? And I'm like, you know, it's a little bit slow. It's a long way to walk down to get the stones. And then the stones are heavy, these rocks, and I got to bring them all up. And he goes like, why don't you get the rocks from up here and throw it down there? And I'm like, oh, that's smart. Felt like an idiot, you know? So, you know, and then when I finished building the pond with the rocks, then he says, you know, wouldn't it be great if there were flowers around it? I'm like, yeah, of course it'd be great. You know? And then I'm like, off to do the next thing. And by the time I finish all those things, I've learned a great lesson. You know, so many different things about willpower, about finishing where I start, about doing something better than I think I can, you know, about not giving up, you know, about finding solutions. And that's how he would train me in understanding my mind. And when I have a hurdle, I go talk to him and he goes like, see what's happening in your mind, you know. He knew how to expose me. One thing he did quite often was move me from things to things, because he wanted me to learn very, very early on to not get attached to one area of the mind.
Oh.
That's where we can get comfortable, right? People have a job, they have a home, they have a routine, and they get stuck in that rut, right? And if you try to change up their life a little bit, they go, no, no way. And same way, like your first company, right? The one consistent thing was change. And it was too disruptive for most people. And so they would leave. But he taught me that in order to grow, to be the next best version of yourself, you have to embrace change. I get to version 2.1 of Dondapani, right? And then I settle there, it becomes part of my life. And then I go, okay, I'm comfortable here, not comfortable, but this has become part of me. And I want to go to 2.2. In order to get to 2.2, I need to break 2.1, right? My nervous system has to adjust. The muscles in my body has to adjust. My mind has to adjust to say like, we're leaving all this behind. And if I'm not used to change, if I'm not comfortable to change, I'm not going to do it. So he taught me very early on, like it's a constant process. And you'll find that most people don't like this. And if you try to do it with somebody else and they don't like it, they'll attack you because you are the instigator for change. And you're the first person they'll blame you. And probably as a CEO, you've had that. You've had people, attack you for, causing disruption in their life.
Or challenging them in the way that you're talking about, where you,
right.
I had a person once, so I used to run these forums, and I know you know what forum is, like EO.
Yep.
So I brought forum into my company, and I had 15 forums in my company. They had about 10 people in each of them, and they're all managers. Yeah, it was cool. So I brought forum into the company, and I ran about 6 of them. So it was maybe 70, 80 people I managed through the forums. And it was a very high level forum, like C-level, EVP level. And I said, I want you to come next.
How big was your company? How many people?
We got up to almost 1,000. Like when I saw you, we were at about 1,000, maybe a little less than that. And then we're now they're probably around 400 or 500. We sold one of the businesses, but at that point we were probably 800 or something like that. And like I said, we had 150 senior level managers or mid-level managers. And so I had them come, and I said, I want you to come and tell me what 3 things you want to change to elevate yourself to the next level in your career. And what does that goal look like to you? And I had a person come in and said, I don't have to change anything. I'm already at the highest level I need to be at. And this is like a really high level person. I've already done more than anyone in this company. It was some crazy shit, right?
Right.
So they were, I was like, oh yeah, you're like, like you're king of the world, right? It was, and I realized, I said, wow, I got them out of their comfort zone, and they're posturing in front of the rest of the executives. And my next thought was, man, I got to get this person out of here if I can't change them. Because I can't have someone that thinks like they can't grow as a person because they're at a C level in my company. It's a big deal, And that's an immediate sign to know right away that person is functioning in the instinctive area of the mind because they hate change. So someone like that, if you continue to push, would turn around and attack you. Because that's what they're in that fight or flight mode. They're either going to run away and say like, oh, this is too much, I'm going to leave, or they're going to turn around and go like, you know what, you're a dick. I'm going to come after you, right? And so once you see someone doing that, it's a good time to like pet the lion on the head and send him off into the into the plains. I don't know if you can see it, but behind me right there is a signed picture of Mr. Miyagi.
Wow,
the Karate Kid, and part of my book launch, I made it's upside down. I made this is modeled after the Karate Kid, which is my favorite movie, just so you know. It's a unicorn Karate Kid bandana. I wanted to set you one, but you told my assistant that you didn't want any possessions. I know that you have a thing about possessions. So
and it's going to mess up with my stripes anyway.
So I know we're running up against the end of the hour here. And I don't want to screw with your stripes, but what does that stand for? What is that the meaning around the paint? I know the I forget the name of the red paint, but do you mind for those of us that are ignorant as to what that means?
Yeah, it's monk Wi-Fi.
That's how you get. That's how you guys connect with each other through the World Wide Web.
No, this is good. 3 bars, good signal with God. 1 or 2 bars, not so good communication.
Really? No.
No, really, man, serious.
Seriously. Are you allowed to say, or is it secret?
It's totally secret, man. I can't. If you promise not to tell anybody, I'll tell you. So I'm a Hindu, and within Hinduism, there are 4 sects, and I belong to one particular sect, and we wear this marking, which is ash on our forehead. The first line represents ego, and a lot of times in spirituality, you hear people say you shouldn't have an ego. In the philosophy I subscribe to, always, it says that it's okay to have an ego. Everyone has an ego. The very fact that you have a name, you have desires, you have preferences, you have an ego. The goal is to cultivate a positive ego. So to be kind, to be gentle, compassionate, empathy, industrious, things like that. The second line has to do with karma, which is the law of cause and effect. And it says that, by controlling your actions and reactions, you can control a lot of what happens in your life. So for example, if you come up to me and you say, hey, Dondapani, your beads look ugly, I could choose then to pinch you or say, what a great opportunity to go shopping, right? How I respond or react makes a big difference, right? So my actions and my reactions determine a lot of my life. So that's the second line. The third line is delusion, meaning that quite often in life, we forget who and what's important to us, and we get caught up with people and things that are not important. So always bringing awareness back to your point of focus, which is your purpose, right? Keep bringing your focus back to your purpose. Right? Because it's so easy to get distracted in life, right? And even though I go around and I teach people about focus and purpose, I still get distracted every now and then, by things that are happening or an opportunity or something like that. And I have to remember, hey, bring it back. But if I, like you, have it clearly defined and written down, it's so much easy to know where to come back to. But if I don't have it written down and outlined, then it's very hard to come back. I always look at it almost like Google Maps, right? If I want to drive from New York to Idaho or somewhere, right? And I map it out and there might be 65 steps. If I make the wrong turn at step 30, I'll always know where to come back to step 30 and continue on my journey. So, defining your purpose, defining your core values, the path to your goal is so critical. So if ever you get distracted, you know exactly where to come back. You take exit 13 and you go like, crap, it was supposed to be exit 14. You just come back to exit 13, keep going, get off at exit 14, right? And I think, so the third line, staying clear and focus on your purpose.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
What sect of Hinduism is that?
It's called Shaivism or Saivism. We worship God in the form of Siva or Shiva. Yeah, it's the oldest sect within the Hindu faith.
That's so cool. I want to learn more about that. For anyone that wants to learn more about that, is there any books do you recommend?
Yeah, there's a book that my guru wrote called Dancing with Siva. Siva spelled S-I-V-A, so Dancing with Siva. And if you go to HimalayanAcademy.com, that's Himalayan, Himalayan academy.com, and search for Dancing with Siva. You can actually download the book for free. There's a free version that you can download, or you can even buy it if you want. That is a very clear description of the Hindu faith. One beautiful thing I'll quickly point out about that book is at the end of the book, there's a beautiful timeline of how the faith has changed over thousands of years. It's very fascinating to read, and also points out a lot of different other religions and, when Christ was born, or Muhammad and Buddha and things like that. So it's fascinating to see like how religion and spirituality, I wouldn't say evolved, but changed over millennia. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds so cool. I want to learn more about that. Well, look, we're up against the end of the hour, and I don't want to keep you too much longer, but obviously there's a lot of ways people can work with you through your online courses. I know you're doing some speaking, but that's a lot of that's invite only. But how can people connect with you? How can they learn from you? What are ways for people to learn more?
I would say the best way is, I'm active on Instagram, and the same post gets shared on Facebook, and I also post a video on YouTube every week. I do send out an email every Wednesday or Thursday. It's not super long, but just have insights and share tools. So that's probably the best way. Sign up for my newsletter, follow me on social, and if anybody wants to take a more serious step, then I have 2 courses, one on focus and one on meditation. But unfortunately, you can't do the meditation course until you do the focus course, because concentration leads to meditation.
Are those online, or those
Yeah, those are online. I actually have an app, so you can download the app on the Play Store or the App Store, and just search for Dondapani. And the courses are available in-app for iOS and Android.
Okay, so Dondapani.org is where they can find you. And then if
Yeah.
they go to the iOS or the Android store, they look up Dondapani for the app, and they can download it there as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And all of my team put in the comments the Himalayan Academy for those of you that are interested. And the name of the book that Dondapani recommended is Dancing with Siva. Is that correct?
Yep.
Siva or Shiva?
That's correct. Yep. Siva, S-I-V-A. Yep.
Great. Dondapani, my gosh, what a wonderful hour to spend with you and to learn from you, my friend.
Likewise, Darius. Thank you for having me here. I'm grateful that you always remember me and think of me.
Oh man, I can't even replicate this experience. Hey, by the way, Dondapani has an email coming in that he has to get off the show 1 minute early, and I'm going to have him come back a third time because I don't want to. Sorry, that's me texting Dondapani from EO. I have an EO chapter texting you. No.
All right. We should do that. Yeah.
I'd love to have you back on the show when you have anything that you want to promote to our tribe. And it's just such a pleasure having you. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Darius. Really appreciate it.
All right, you guys, we have a show with Coach Robert Ellis later on this afternoon. He's a professor from Singularity University. So join us, guys. Follow me at The Real Darius M on Facebook so you can see the shows, or go to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the Greatness Machine so you can get these great talks, download them, share them with your friends, or just go to our website at therealdarius.com. Guys, we'll talk to you later.